So I think that, in the snowball analogy, like I'm in the center of the snowball. And as I'm rolling and this snow is accumulating on the outside of me, it's creating more and more distance between myself and anybody else. And that was definitely what I felt, is that I felt like it was harder and harder for me to reach out to other people to say, like, I need help, because I was building more and more of this thick protective layer. At least I thought it was protective, but it wasn't protecting me. It was just insulating me. Hello, and welcome back to Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander. I am your host, Bruce Alexander, for now, because I have a very special podcast pirate with me today taking over my show. Taylor Doe is here to interview me after today's reflection. How comfortable are you trusting others to collaborate? This is something I used to really struggle with. Whether I signed up for the partnership or got voluntold, the process would be the same. I would set mental expectations and then work myself to death trying to do it all. My experience was generally that, one, no, they did not have the same expectations as me, because I am an insane workhorse who has crazy expectations for every project. Two, my fear of their performance made it much harder for me to deliver in mine. Three, trying to avoid the conflict I thought was inevitable gave the impression that I did not want to work as part of a team. What I have learned since is that the same thing that has solved most of my issues solves this one as well: authenticity. Being open and honest about my expectations allows my team to meet me where I am at, or allow me to be shaped by the situation. Being self-aware allows me to understand that my hyperfocus guides me to set really aggressive goals, which might not be feasible as part of a team. Embracing my strengths grants me acceptance to take on larger responsibility to achieve ambitious results. I want to hear what experiences you have had or what fears have stopped your collaborative enterprises. So go to the episode 20 reflection at Authentic Identity Management on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, or LinkedIn and let me know. You can type collaborate in the comments if you want me to reach out and set up a free 30-minute call to help you start collaborating with confidence. If you love the space we are creating or want to help advance my mission of making the world a safer place for authenticity, here are a few ways you can support this show. Leave a review and tell me what you think is great, needs work, or you would like to see more of in the show. Follow the show on your favorite podcast platform or on all the platforms you use, and use that share function. Send an episode of this show to someone you care about or post about it on your social media feeds or in your stories. Those are all free ways to support the Authentic mission. If you are uncomfortable being a spokesperson for authenticity, you can be a financial backer of the Authentic mission by going to Patreon and searching Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander and signing up for a membership. I am dedicated to the work of this mission long term, but I would love your help in more quickly making the world a safer place to show up as yourself. Taylor Doe and I had a great conversation back on episode 9, where he was an outstanding guest. I'm not going to do much of an intro to myself because Taylor has one for me, and I've written a few questions for the episode that will definitely let me talk plenty about myself. So for now, I step back as your host and hand it over to Taylor Doe for an authentic takeover.
Let's go. Bruce, thanks for having me on the pod. I want to do something a little bit different today. As you've already mentioned, I want to take over your podcast because I want your listeners to hear maybe a side of you and some stories that they might not have heard before. You have had some really amazing guests on, and you are an amazing host. And so you're asking these questions, getting to know your guests. But what I want to do today is kind of take over your podcast and kind of sit in your chair a little bit and ask some questions of you for you to be able to authentically share, like I said, some stories that you don't typically share on the pod about your life and some of your experiences. That was an amazing intro on collaboration because that's what we're doing. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit in our conversation. But I kind of want to do another little intro. So Bruce, welcome to the Authentic on Air podcast. I'm your takeover host for the day, Taylor Doe. Today we have an amazing guest. His name is Bruce Alexander. We have him on the pod. So welcome, Bruce.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me on my show. I'm really excited to do this. I think it really is a great way for me to show a little bit more of myself to the audience.
Yeah. I would love to kind of start, and we'll kind of start here. I'd love for you to share a little bit, kind of give a snapshot of your day. Like, what are you doing? How do you spend your time? What are you passionate about in kind of this season of your life?
Yeah, I think that this podcast is a big part of what I'm doing with my life right now. Like, I'm really focusing on trying to put my authentic self out into the world and create more room for people to be authentic. And that is really like my main focus. I want to help people in doing that, both by just creating this podcast and putting it out there for free, and also through coaching and helping people accept their identity and be authentic and how they share that in the world. Um, I do work a lot, which is weird not from going to a job where like I went to work all the time and being home now all the time, but I'm still working just as much, if not more. I also spend a lot of time with my kids doing homeschooling with them during the day. That's half my week. The other half is working on the podcast and business stuff. And yeah, that's the main things I'm working on right now.
I love it, and I know that you've shared this on the pod, kind of in other spaces. But for now, I would love to kind of ask you, like, you have this podcast called Authentic on Air, and I would love to kind of hear your definition of authenticity, and then kind of roll into the reason why it's so important to you. Like, the name of a podcast is a big deal, as you know,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, you chose a specific word for a specific reason. So one, I would love to kind of hear your definition, and then two, like, what was the reason why you like chose this word? Like, this is the thing that you're going after
Yeah.
in this season of your life.
So like I'll refer back to the intro a little bit. I talked about being self-aware. Um, so much of my life, I didn't realize why I wasn't connecting with people. And a lot of it had to do with not looking inwards enough, not, putting a lot of blame on other people. Um, Everything was wrong and it was never my fault. And that was something that wasn't very genuine about me. And I didn't even really know I was doing it. But once I started to figure that out and I started to, figure what was going on with me. And this, like, ADHD for me played a big part in this role, that I was just missing some of those social cues and I wasn't able to learn from it because I didn't know I was missing. I just thought that, there was something wrong and there was nothing I could do about it. Once I learned that about myself, it became really important for me to kind of share myself up front and say, hey, these are some of the things I'm dealing with. For whatever reason, this connection is important. So I want to give you the information you need to be able to meet me halfway or meet me where I'm at or not. Like, and that's okay. Not everybody wants to meet you where you're at, but I want to give people the opportunity to do that by giving them the information up front and letting them make their own decision versus making it for them and trying to hide parts of myself. And uh, that's the biggest part for me, is the self-awareness, but it's also uh, embracing my strengths and faults. That's a big part of it. There are things that I'm good at and there are things that I'm bad at, and I tried really hard to do things that I wasn't very good at to try to make other people happy. And in doing that, I never made them happy, but I also gave off an air of being fake. I wasn't trying to. I was trying to be something I wasn't. And that's fake. Like, that's the whole thing, is like I didn't think I was a fake person, but I was being a fake person. So that's that's what authenticity is to me, is like really being self-aware and accepting yourself as you are. It doesn't mean you can't be aspirational to be a better version of yourself that you can't want to grow. I think that that's part of it. I think it's a very important part of it, is embracing yourself and loving yourself enough to know that you deserve better. And once I was able to look at myself and embrace myself, I started wanting better, and I started attracting better relationships and a better quality of relationship with my spouse and my children and whatever, because I stopped hiding from those things that scared me. What really made it a huge deal for me was the I don't know, I like looking back, the uh just the stacking and stacking and stacking of these experiences that were building up, and I wasn't like really finding meaningful connection outside of like my marriage is obviously a very meaningful connection, but that was different. And even that wasn't as deep as it could have been because there were parts of myself I was hiding. And once I started to accept those things, that relationship got deeper. Other relationships, the people whom I let in quickly, like I was like, hey, here's what's going on with me. Here I am, not hiding. Those relationships became deeper. I have friends now like I've never had before in my life. Like I've got friends who support me and who cheer for me and who want the best for me whenever before. Like I don't even really like I have no friends from before 10 well I can say yeah, but before 10 years ago because and it's not that I didn't meet good people. I just wasn't in a place to actually cultivate good relationship because I didn't know who I was.
And so what I see from this side is that you're creating a space through podcasts, through a podcast community, through the community that you're building for people to start that self-reflection. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to um for me, like I'm not saying that this is everybody's journey, but for me, it's really important. Like I think I've lived experiences and I've got the training and I've been through just the right circumstances to make me a really, really great facilitator of authenticity. Like I've felt what it's like and how dark and lonely it can get trying to be somebody you're not. And I'm on the other side of that now, and I really appreciate the quality of life, and I want to share that with other people. And I want to give other people a chance to partake in both my authenticity, but also start to uncover their own. And other people who also are already more on that side, that takes continued support as well.
Sure. Well, I love that kind of aspect of like what's happening now, the process you're in, what you're creating that. But I would love to kind of like, can we like give the listeners like a journey of how you got to this point? So
Sure.
can we just start from maybe the beginning a little bit? Like where are you from? Like have you moved a lot? Have you lived in the same house for 50 years? It's like
No.
what is your story, Bruce? Let's start from the beginning. Like where are you from?
I'm initially from Oklahoma City, but I have not lived in the same spot at all. Um, my earliest memories are of a little like I was born in Oklahoma City, but we lived in Chickasha early in my life,
Okay.
and my dad has a very, very, very strong connection to Chickasha, like unhealthily strong. Like I'm not joking. Like he makes like it is so important to him that everything be filtered through a lens of Chickasha, and that's always been really hard for me because he's set that as barriers to our relationship. Whenever, later on in life, we moved to South Oklahoma City. My parents got divorced after a while. Like I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
I moved to Tulsa with my mom. We lived in 6 or so different houses while I was in Tulsa. And I wanted to move back with my dad at one point because I was a teenager and I was not happy with my situation because what teenager is. And my dad, who lived in North Oklahoma City at the time, like Northwest OKC, wanted me, if I lived with him, to commute to Chickasha to go to school. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. To have a 17-year-old driving 45 minutes to go to school, and he also wanted me to play for their football team because I was a decent football player, and he wanted me to represent him there and be like, oh, that's Bruce's son, which we have the same name, so people would know it's which I appreciate that you want to show off something you're proud of, but to the point where he would not let me come down until I agreed to go to Chickasha whenever there was a high school that was like a really, great reproach right around the corner from it. And I was like, can I just go there? And no, I couldn't. So that didn't happen. And that wasn't the only time that Chickasha was set as the barrier between us.
So did you uh, end up going to Chickasha? No. You stayed in Tulsa?
Yeah, I stayed with my mom because that was even then I knew that was not healthy. I was like, why would I need to drive 45 minutes every day? Sometimes, like what if we had bad weather?
Right.
Like that's just like if I was living out in the country and the only school was 45 minutes away, that's one thing. Yeah, but there's like 15 schools like just off the highway between here and there. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. That doesn't feel smart. So from there, I stayed in Tulsa. I did eventually with him whenever I started college. I went to, I got into OU, and I was still commuting. I was commuting from basically making the same commute minus 15 minutes. I was driving from Northwest Oklahoma City to OU, and that was obviously a struggle. And I eventually ended up moving in with some quote unquote friends down there to continue going to school, and stuff got pretty far off the rails at that point.
Yeah.
To sum it up pretty briefly, got in with a crowd who had money and had opportunities that I didn't have, and I was behaving that way. I was behaving like somebody who had money and was going to be able to get out of any trouble that they got into, and whenever that happened, I wasn't able to. So, I like had some time doing drugs. Got ended up having a warrant out for my arrest. That was the first time I felt like I was actively running, because I knew this stuff, and I left. I got kicked out of school because my grades weren't there. I wasn't showing up to class. I was late every day when I did come. So I got kicked out of OU. And instead of just like facing the things I'd done, I went back to Tulsa to stay with my mom and just hid. I went back to working my high school job. I did everything I possibly could to just really hide from life. And eventually my mom found out that I had a warrant out, and she took me to Norman to go to jail. I only spent like 16 hours in jail, but that is not fun. Not a great experience. And also having your mom take you to jail, not a great experience. She was right, but it still didn't feel very good. And then from that point, I had also like had student loans that were starting to come calling. So all this anxiety was putting pressure into my life, and I just like receded further and further. I had this. I was on probation. I got off, fairly good for having been somebody who like was actively dealing drugs at one point, and I just got off of probation for 2 years, and then parole for like another year. But that made me feel like I felt like a criminal, and I accepted that mindset, not as that I wanted to go out and commit more crimes, but as if I had no worth. And that really affected how I behaved for like the next 10 years. So, and yeah, I acted like an idiot.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Can you explain a little bit of maybe the feeling or the thoughts you had? You kind of mentioned this idea of running or hiding, right? And maybe that might be a connection to some of the listeners, and for people who like might be in that season right now. Like, what were some things that you were thinking in that time when you were trying to hide? Was it this feeling of like maybe like, hey, if I try to push this far enough away, I can push it out of my mind.
Yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah.
what were some of the things that you were experiencing then?
So, like if you know anything about ADHD, you know that object permanence is a big thing. It's like if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So I would, if I get any mail or anything about my loan, like I would immediately like throw it away. I would, um, I would just put all of the emails like in the spam. I would really just literally hide from it's like if I just act like it's not there, then it's not, right? Like everything's fine. And the same goes with, the fact that whenever I initially so my house was raided whenever I was at OU, because they thought I was like this huge drug dealer. I wasn't. Like, I was a dealer of some degree at one point. And when they raided my house, they said, you can give us somebody else, somebody bigger, and this could all go away. And like I said, oh yeah, sure, sure. I didn't really have anybody. Like there wasn't like this, this El Chapo that I was like sitting on.
Right.
There was another guy that I went to school with who did have a pretty big connection, but he was just another kid. Like I wasn't going to give him up like that. And it wasn't out of, this like strong loyalty or anything. I just was like, it's not his fault that, he's.
Hello, authentic audience. I hope you are really enjoying this unique opportunity to get to know this man behind the mic. As much as I am an open book, I have found that I don't really get too deep into the nuts and bolts of what makes me tick in a lot of conversations. Taylor really gave me a chance to spread my backstory wings and fly. So a big shout out to Doe. Next week, we will be really shifting gears to a road much less traveled. So much less, it isn't even paved. Actually, is it even a road? It's more like a trail. Yeah, a nature trail. The original Wild Wanderer, Lorianne Wild, joins me in the studio and we get back to our roots. A play educator, a certified positive discipline parent educator, and the now resident nature program coordinator at the Oklahoma nonprofit St. Francis of the Woods. Lorianne is, in my opinion, the greatest builder of community and safe spaces of all time. We get deep into community building, reconnecting through nature, and how Lorianne literally changed my life forever. It is really a great episode, and I can't wait for you to hear it. If you are enjoying Taylor's interview skills, you should hear him in the interviewed chair. And you can. Right after you finish this episode, go listen to episode 9. Don't shorten your story, identifying pivotal moments and individuals to develop your character with the at TEDx speaker, Taylor Doe. This is the most underrated episode I have dropped to date, and I really don't understand why it's so slept on, but you should check it out. For now, back to my interview. Thanks for listening.
The guy I know, like, it's my fault. Like, because we knew that they were coming. Like, our neighbor had told us that there was an unmarked car going through our trash. He doesn't know what we're doing, but we need to clean up our act. And we did for a while, but I let the people who were around me behave in a way that said, like, I didn't care. Like, I knew I was going to get in trouble. Like, I knew it was coming. And I stayed there for one, instead of getting out of that situation.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a pattern for me, was letting other people make big decisions for my life. And I think that for me, having done a lot of self work and looking back at my story, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was raised in a way where fear and guilt were the masters of my life. There was a lot of reward and appreciation whenever I got like these objective goals, but I didn't I didn't feel like I had any worth or value. It was all about getting these things. And once I moved out and was on my own for the first time, I didn't know how to actually make decisions that were good for myself. I had no idea how to do it. So in that vacuum, I let other people come in, other strong personalities who didn't really care about me, but they cared about using me. And when people like that have control, they make decisions that are going to not end up well for you. So, yeah. But as far as the hiding, it didn't make anything feel better. Like that's an important part that I keep coming back to in my life, is that those those tendencies to hide and lie and try to like make everything seem better than it is made me feel worse. Like everything I did to try to like put that thing off made me feel more anxious, made there more lies, and like harder to actually identify with people because there was just more and more baggage blocking my connection to other people. And like that's a big part of why I'm so like bought into being completely honest with people, because I felt all that different stuff blocking me. And yeah, it really is so real.
And did you see, was there kind of do you see that there's kind of a snowball effect
Oh yeah.
to that? Like
Yeah.
over the course of time of maybe a little lie here, I'm not fully authentic, or I'm trying to hide and I push this away and then
Yeah.
this snowballs. Um, it, what are your kind of thoughts on that when you either one, your experience or other people that you've seen when the snowball kind of gets really big? What
Mhm.
is maybe some thoughts that if some a listener is kind of feeling in that moment of like, my snowball is way too big at this point, it's like I'm trying to hold this back, or
Yeah.
what are some of your experiences that you started to kind of chip away at that snowball? What is
Yeah,
that
I
look
can
like?
definitely say that, as the snowball grows, it gains momentum. And the farther it gets down the hill, the harder it is to stop. And that's just with the momentum. Plus, it's gaining size and mass and speed. Like all these things are building up because instead of like doing things to slow it down, you're just adding more stuff to speed it up, which makes it harder when you're ready to make it, to stop it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree that the snowball is a really good analogy for it. And for me, it just became so there. It was just so much speed in my snowball that I was no longer able to act like I was okay. I didn't realize it. I was doing stuff that didn't line up with what I was saying. My behavior started to like started to betray me. I was doing stuff that was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." It's like, "Are you sure? Because you're not acting like you're okay." Because the the person I was acting like wasn't lining up with the lie to any degree anymore. Because the lie was too complex, it was too complicated, there was too much there that I just like, you can't. How many lies can you keep up with before you start to fall apart?
Yeah.
And it took a long time uh, to really figure that out. It's just you get like uh, decision fatigue and you get paralysis from like that anxiety. I just didn't do anything for a long time, and um, my wife is really if it wasn't for her, I'm sure I wouldn't be here. Like I was living like I did not want to be alive until she was in my life already, but she kind of said like, I'm not gonna sit here and watch you kill yourself, basically. And that was the first time I was like, well, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's if you put it that way, that's kind of intense. I didn't really know I was doing that. And that's like that's whenever I started to like look at what I was doing. It still took a long time before I ever really started to embrace myself.
with with kind of the snowball analogy we're using, kind of talk about how that impacts relationships around you,
Yeah.
like the snowball, and how that is like. Do you have any siblings or anything, or maybe
Hmm.
is like how that interacts or that impacts the relationships with your parents or even a significant other, a future spouse.
Yeah.
It's like those things. What's kind of the ramifications of a snowball, kind of with those things in regards to relationships?
So I think that, in this the snowball analogy, like I'm in the center of the snowball. And as I'm rolling and this snow is accumulating on the outside of me, it's creating more and more distance between myself and anybody else. Like, and that was definitely what I felt, is that I felt like it was harder and harder for me to reach out to other people to say like I need help, because I was building more and more of this thick protective layer. At least I thought it was protective, but it wasn't protecting me. It was just insulating me from other people's like outreach. And like I'm definitely the first to say that I have not had the greatest family relationships. We're not a lot of it, like we have a lot of trauma. Like just my mom's mom was very, very cold, like very narcissistic. And my mom, if she's not a like flat out narcissist, she just took on a lot of her narcissistic traits. And so a lot of that relationship was her expecting me to perform for her, to be her source, to be, the thing that she needed. And that's not what your parent is supposed to be. And my dad was also, he just, he loves me so much, but the way that he expresses that love is by exerting control. Like he's like, this is what you should do. And it was never like, this is a piece of advice. It was a social imperative. If I didn't do what he was going to do, our relationship was going to break down. And that just created more anxiety. So it's not that everybody else was so impossible to get along with what I was going through. It just made it worse.
Yeah.
It's, I didn't, until my wife, I didn't really have somebody who was like just there for me and really just wanted the best for me, whether that be what she was suggesting or not. She just cared.
Yeah.
And, but like you said, the snowball analogy it really just made it harder and harder for me to reach out to other people, because I was just encapsulated in this, this snowball of lies and deceit.
And so, coming from that, like kind of swinging the other way, you graduate college, or you go to college, you have the incident, things happen, go through probation, all of that. You kind of said the next 10 years. Let's talk a little bit about, like, let's start kind of turn the corner of like, how did you meet your wife? I'm kind of curious to know about that story, and kind of like maybe some of the things that started to change over the course of time. What was that like?
So, like I said, I went back to Tulsa and I worked at my high school job, which was a place called Wild Oats in Tulsa, which got bought out by Whole Foods. And like I was there during that period, and it was a job that I enjoyed. It was fun. I thought I was good at it, but once again, being ADHD, like you kind of had these delusions of like grandiosity. Like I thought I was much better at doing things than I was. And it's not that. Let me take that back, because it's like I was good at things. but it was the way that I got them done was definitely not what they wanted. And some of them were just unacceptable. Like I was super slow setting things up. And that whenever you're like, you have a limited amount of time to get the counter open, whenever I was a meat cutter, and you can't just get 2 hours of extra overtime coming in early to make it look perfect because, that was like, I made it look really great, but it's like, yeah, but you're taking 2 hours. Like it's supposed to be a 30-minute thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it looks great. And they're like, yes, it looks great. It took me so many times of getting that same feedback in different ways to actually understand that, oh, I have to be faster. Mm-hmm. And that is something that is, I wish that I'd understood what ADHD was for me earlier, because I knew that I was ADHD whenever I went back to Tulsa, but I just thought that meant I was going to struggle to paying attention to things I didn't care about a lot, and I was going to be late. I really didn't understand how much it affects. Like I didn't understand what executive function was, first off. Yeah. And I didn't know how much it affected it. I also didn't understand how much it affected me being able to pick up on social cues. Yeah. I didn't understand so much of that because I was popular in high school and I had made straight A's because I was just smart. Like all those things that come later in life that kind of ADHD can slap you down with, I just wasn't aware of that. And so like I just kept getting these same things over and over again. And that was tough. I left there and I started working at a restaurant. So anyways, I met Kate at Whole Foods. She was a bagger. I was a cashier when we met. She made a cashier. I went back to the meat department, but she was a vegan and I was working in the meat counter whenever we really got serious. And that was like that's the wildest part of our story, is that she was like, she ate almost nothing. She would eat like a piece of sprouted bread with like veganese, which is like a vegan mayonnaise, and like kale. Like that was a lunch for her. And I was like, are you serious? Like I love food. Yeah. And I cook a lot. Like I'm a good cook. So I cooked a lot. And like I was, making steaks and shrimp and, making fish. Like I worked in the meat market. So I was constantly in it, making that stuff. And she eventually was like, that smells really good. I mean, like, I don't remember if it was fish or shrimp, but she's like, let me try that. And she did, and was, and she was transported. she never looked back.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was, that was something that we still to this day bond over, is our enjoyment of like good food. Yeah. That's something that we really share, and that I love about her is that I don't know how she's the same person, because she loves a good meal. And that girl that I met did not care about a good meal. She's just like, I just want my piece of bread and like that's all. I'm like, okay.
Well, tell me a little bit. Side story. Tell me about cooking a little bit. Like,
okay.
What is?
I'll tell you a lot.
Like, what is? How did you find a passion? Did you learn about it from someone, or was it over the years of kind of exploring? Or
it's like, so what I've learned. I was thinking about this, getting ready for today. I've figured out that I have not been inherently coachable, like for most of my life. And I think a big part of that was the ADHD, like disconnect, but also that hiding and fear kind of made me afraid to be vulnerable enough to let somebody teach me things. So, and then also, and when somebody had the ability to teach me, I would be so afraid to take feedback. So I was like, I would just avoid that situation versus like leaning into somebody being able to teach me something, which is weird. Like thinking about it, it's weird. I did not realize that, because I was, once again, doing behaviors that I didn't actually believe in, trying to keep up with the different lives I had running. So no, nobody taught me how to cook. Like my stepdad was a decent cook. He didn't really teach me a lot. So it was like, I just started messing around whenever I started working at Wild Oats the first time. It was like, I worked at a grocery store that had, good product. And I just started, slowly buying stuff and messing with stuff. And then especially once I got in the meat department, I was getting
like, it's on.
It really was. It was like, I was getting, meat cheap. And then they also like let us demo stuff like at the place. So I started making stuff, and I was like, I kind of had
pretty good at this.
Yeah, I had a natural proclivity to it. Like I, made a couple of weird things, but I started watching a lot of Food Network, like a lot of Food Network. Okay. And, this is the first time that my ADHD hyperfocus really benefited me, because like I was hyper focused on food. Like I was like, I can be better at it. So I just started watching it all the time. Didn't realize that until much later, that I was literally watching food all the time, but I took in so much information and started to just like do stuff that not everybody can just, watch it and do it, but that's how it worked for me. And I really just loved it. And I loved seeing the look on somebody's face whenever I shared a meal with them. And they were like, oh man, this is really good. I loved sharing that. So it's something that I've continued to love. I've moved more to smoking. Like smoking is it's more my current creative food process. Yeah, it's like I still, like I'll still throw down every now and then for for everybody's birthday. I'm like, what do you guys want? And I make whatever it is that they desire. Like I made ramen for the first time 2 years from my daughter's birthday. She was, we're into anime, and so they really liked different Japanese thing. And she's like, we've never had ramen. Can you make that? And I was like, I will be able to.
Yeah.
And I did, and it was really good. Wow. And so now we have that, every couple months, and
really cool.
Yeah.
The thing I want to pause real quick and say is maybe a question for all of us is, what areas of our lives are we not coachable? Right? It's like, are there still, I think that's a process for all of us to kind of reflect and say, hey, what areas, one, do I have too much confidence, or maybe I'm unaware of, kind of like what you said, I didn't realize I was, not coachable until a little bit farther down the road. What are areas in our lives that, it's like we aren't coachable, and it would benefit us to be coachable in that, right? I think you probably look back and maybe say, if I was more coachable in this area of my life, maybe I'd be farther than where I'm at today, or maybe things wouldn't have been as hard, or maybe I would have learned, some technique that really would have taken me down another path. It's hard to kind of imagine what that could be, but I think we all have the ability to kind of look back and say, man, if I would have learned something different or been more coachable, the outcomes could have been different, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree that being coachable is like a really important skill for growth. Like what I believe and understand now is that everybody has strengths to bring to the table. And I was never really willing to accept that, because I always felt so small. I didn't want to let somebody else's strengths make me look small. And that was a really, really small way of thinking, but it's what I felt. It was like, I wanted to always be showing off, because I really felt so insecure that I really wanted to be putting out, like, look what I can do. This is what I can do. I can do it better than them. I don't need any help. I don't want anybody to come show me how to do this thing better, because I can do it myself. And I really regret that, because, I have been in situations where there have been people who've been great at things, maybe not even exactly the thing that I wanted to learn, but I like learning. So why would I not just take the experience and let it shape me? And that's something I very much regret, is that there's been a lot of opportunities where I could have been shaped in different ways that I refuse to open myself up to.
That's very insightful. We'll just say that. Random question would be, if you would go back in time and you were the manager of yourself at Whole Foods,
wow,
what would you do different as the manager?
Wow,
kind of leading yourself.
That I think that's a really good question, and I've been talking about leadership a lot lately. I was on my friend Tolu's podcast, and his podcast is about leadership. It's called Dunamis EQ, and it's about leadership with emotional intelligence. And that's something that I feel is very important, and it's something I haven't felt. I felt the lack of that in my various different careers. Is that although I definitely was not perfect, I felt like I was met with a lot of the lack of emotion, a lack of emotional intelligence, people not understanding, people not having grace, people not being patient. And that's what I would I would manage myself with emotional intelligence, and I would take the time to get to know me and know that, because I honestly, all of the complaints I ever got had to do really with me caring too much. Like, I know that sounds stupid. Like, it sounds like I'm, like a resume answer. It's like, my only weakness is I care too much. It's like, no, but I cared so much about the product I was putting out that sometimes it was hard for me to put it out as quickly as they wanted, or as, in the way that they wanted to, because I wanted to control what it looked like. And that was, that's not always ideal,
Yep. So fast forward, what was when did you all get married?
We got married in 2010.
Okay. And you've mentioned your kids.
Yeah, I have 4 kids now.
Love it. And so you're cooking, making birthday stuff, and doing your thing, your thing with that. What's one thing that you love about your family?
One thing, man, my family is, what I love about them is that they are the reason that I am who I am today. Like that through all of my, different struggles, accepting life, they're the one thing that I've let shape me all throughout this thing. Is like my wife before my kids, but my oldest daughter, I remember whenever, like, I used to drink really heavily because I was hiding from a lot, and that was one way that I, one vice I used to help, swallow the lie. I had an experience where, like, I threw up in front of her, like at my mother-in-law's house, and it was like the most embarrassing thing I'd ever done. Like, and I'd done some stupid stuff. Like really bear with me. Like, it broke my heart. She didn't, she was 2 years old. Like, she didn't say anything about it. It was just like, she looked at me, and I just felt so gross. Like, I felt so disgusted with myself that experience led to me really starting to, I mean, it wasn't rock bottom yet, but it was close. That experience was where I started to, like, say, like, what is wrong with me? And what I eventually got to from what is wrong with me is, there's not anything wrong with you. Stop hating yourself so much. And so it's been a hard road. I've definitely hated myself a lot at different times, but they've always loved me. And their love has given me the ability to love myself. And yeah, I wouldn't have been able to get there by myself. I really wouldn't have.
The people in our lives, as you kind of share the things that you're sharing, make a huge difference, right? And it kind of sounds like you're very aware of that, even kind of reflecting on your story of maybe in high school and then in college with some of the people that you were around, and the influence there. And then, the blessing, or like this woman comes along, and then you guys create this beautiful family, and the impact that has had on your life. And even the way that I see you today, we don't know each other very well, and I know about you, and it's like we have mutual friends and all of that, but kind of where you're at today, the journey, is like, I'm glad we're able to kind of highlight that on our podcast today, because it's very evident of like the work that you have put in. You said in kind of your intro, like, dude, you're a workhorse, right? Yeah. And I feel like you've been being a workhorse on yourself as well, not just external work and all of that. Like, you've really done some hard work of internalizing some of the kind of trauma that you've had, and some of the relationships that are both positive and negative in your life, that have kind of got you to a place today. Love to kind of take the next step of, you have this family. Obviously, they are your everything, and have done that. What's kind of the next part of your story after you start having kids and things like that? Where were you at? Or were you back in Oklahoma City?
So no, I wasn't back in Oklahoma City yet. So we had our son, and I was working I was doing a lot of different stuff at a restaurant, and we got pregnant with our third kid, and it started to hit me like, we're barely making it. Like, we were living paycheck to paycheck. That loan was still whispering in my ear all the time. And like, I felt everything crashing down on me. My wife had been staying at home for a while because she was constantly pregnant. Like, yes, I do like her a lot. Yes. But it was on me, and I took it upon myself to provide for my family, and I was failing. And that stressed me out so much. It's like, I can be a lot of things, but I don't want to be a failure as a provider to this family that's so important to me. So my dad had been trying to get me to be a firefighter since I was in high school. He was a firefighter, and he was like, it's a good job. It's a good job. It's a good job. and I didn't want to do it. Like, I didn't want to do that. I never felt like me.
Yeah.
And I would tell myself at the time, like, I was just resisting it because it was him telling me. I came to find out that it's not really what I was meant to be doing really at all, but it's what I needed to do for the time. So I finally accepted that advice, and I became a firefighter. I initially was going to do it in Tulsa, got partially through the way in that process, and then I found out you have to have your EMT certification before you can be one there. And I had already committed to being a firefighter.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, I'll apply in Oklahoma City. Doing the process from Tulsa to Oklahoma City, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was that the first time that I applied, I got in. That doesn't usually happen. And then, but it's a long process. So it took like 6 months from the time I applied, took the first, the first test, took the physical examination, did the CPAT, did all that stuff. It took 6 months before I actually got my job offer. And then from that point, it was like, oh, I got a job offer. Like, this is happening.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still in Tulsa. Like, we have to find a place. Like, I think we had somewhere between like two. I'm bad at time, but
yeah.
I know that we had something like between 2 weeks and a month to get to Oklahoma City and be ready to start the job. Because usually people are like, they're already all in when they do it. Like, I wanted to do that, but I was not already moved down here assuming that I was going to try again and I was going to, whatever. Like, it wasn't like that for me. So we kind of had to throw everything together, and this is where like life started to get hard for my wife, because whenever we had started talking about it, I was going to be a Tulsa firefighter. Like, her family was in Tulsa. Like, we had like all of our support structure except for my dad and his family were in Tulsa.
Right.
For example, I lived right around the corner from my mom, like 4 or 5 houses away. So we were comfortable where we were as far as living situation.
Yeah.
And whenever I found out about the EMT thing, to me, it was like natural to just like keep moving, because I'm going to provide for my family. And we never really had the conversation of like, hey, are you okay doing this in Oklahoma City? I just was like, hey, I'm applying at Oklahoma City. Hey, I got this. Hey, I got this. And she's just like, kind of got swept up in it. And then it was like, okay, now we're moving. Well, we have to find a house. So it was never like, let's have a conversation about it if you're okay with it. It was like, I remember I told her, like, we'll talk about it in 5 years. Like, if you don't like it after 5 years, I'll quit. That was a lie. Like, that was one of those lies that I accept now as being something I told her because I was afraid of the conflict. I was hiding from how she would handle the truth. And that's like something I did with her many times. And that affected our relationship really negatively until I started to take accountability for those things. But that was a big one, because I dragged her down here. And then I also didn't understand how big of a commitment it was. Once I started at the academy, it was a full-time, like not just full-time, full life job. Like, we had just had our third kid and I was completely vacant from our life. It was very, very traumatizing for her. Like, she's in a brand new place with no support. Like, my dad would, he helped us with money at some, and he's not great at this, but he tried to provide some community. He kind of drops you on people. He'll just like so-and-so's having a birthday party. He'll just invite you and not tell that person that he's invited you to a birthday. Exactly. So my wife would she had nobody. So she'd go to this birthday party and would be so awkward because she doesn't know anybody. Yeah. The person didn't know she was coming. There's just, all this stuff going on. And meanwhile, whenever I wasn't at the academy, I was at Barnes & Noble's with my best friend Tommy studying for the academy, because we had to learn. So like a lot of these guys had the privilege of being able to, have gone to like EOTC to go to the firefighter program, or they had their EMT degree. Like, they had some understanding of this, or they were, they were volunteers or whatever.
Like, there was a baseline.
There was some sort of baseline.
And you're coming in with like
zero.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my dad did it. So you'd think that I would have been prepared better. I was not. I was not like, I was physically prepared to start, but I wasn't even really that like physically prepared because I've been preparing for so long. Like if I had gotten on at Tulsa, I would have been doing great. But I had to keep sustaining so long because I started the process over, and I was still doing great. But it was like a year that I was in probably the best endurance physical condition I was ever in. Towards the end, once I got the job, I'd kind of let off a little bit. So I got there and was getting my ass handed to me. Like it was really hard. Like I'm a big dude naturally anyways. Yeah. And it's hard to keep up whenever you run a whole bunch. Like we weren't in there, bench pressing for maxes. Yeah. That's not what the goal is. The goal is to be able to perform in a house fire for as long as you need to be able to like carry people out of the buildings when you are absolutely exhausted. That is a different kind of training. And keeping your body that way long term was a lot of work. So Kate was here. She was alone. She didn't know how to cook, like, because I had cooked for us, like, so in the little bit of spare time I had, I was like making like little comments, like, here's something you can do to cook, like trying to help her learn to cook because she's got to provide she's got to provide food for the family. Yeah. She's making my lunches because I literally didn't have time to do anything but study and sleep for like 4 or 5 hours a night. And she was like everything for me. But that whole time was so traumatizing for her. Like she did everything. She showed up. She was stressed out. She, made things tough for her to be a single parent, basically, with the kids. Yeah. But she did it, and she, did her very best. And I was just like not there. So whenever I finally came out on the other side of that first year, because once I finished the 16-week academy, I had to start riding to EMT school, which whenever I was doing it, you didn't go to EMT school on your shift days. You went on your days off. So I was like every Monday through Friday that I wasn't at my 24-hour job, I was at EMT school. Wow. If I wasn't at EMT school, I was studying for EMT school. And then so like that was, and if I wasn't, then on the weekends, we'd go back to Tulsa and I would run seven. Like at this point, I was only running like 3 or 4 miles because the academy was over, but you still had to be in really good shape to make it through your first year. Like, yeah. And so it was, and then also I was getting like 20 to 30,000 steps daily just at work, because being the new guy, you can't sit down. Like that is literally what there's like, don't sit down. You just keep moving. You just stay busy. Not because it's healthy, but that's just what you're taught to do. Yeah. So that was very, very difficult for her. And they ended up coming back to me whenever we finally tried to start living life after that, because she was mad. She was mad at me. And I understandably, because I signed her up for this thing that we didn't understand all of. She'd been completely abandoned for almost a year with no community, no nothing. And then I also was not going to leave the job, because now I've put too much sweat equity in. So the option of ever leaving was like, no way. Like I've put in this incredibly difficult year that I don't think I could do again. And you want me to leave because you're unhappy? I don't think so. This is going to put food in our family's mouths. It's, the first year you get paid like dirt. Yeah. And then the second year is okay. And then the third year, it jumps way up. And then like after that, like considerably better. Like I was making really good money when I left. Yeah. But I had also sacrificed so much of myself by the time I left, because I was so bought into the money of it. It's like, it's a great job, but it wasn't great for me. Like my number one thing I'm looking for whenever I think about doing something on a daily basis is being able to like let my brain, work. And that literally was not what I was told not to do. Yeah. It's like, stop thinking. Stop your thinking too much. Just do what you're told. Yeah. And it crushed me. Like, what do you mean? Like, I've got ideas. I've got, I want to understand things. It's like, no, don't ask questions about this. Like, don't do this. Like, just do it. And yeah, that was really tough.
And so so we're now getting closer to today's timeline, correct? Mm-hmm. What was kind of the process for not being a firefighter anymore, really being like taking a step out on your own is very challenging, very scary, all that stuff. Was there something in the interim, or was that your last?
That was my last. Well, okay, so I wasn't like a out in the field active firefighter until 2020.
Okay.
And then I got promoted. So like, a little and then moment that happened is Kate got bit by a tick, and she got really, really sick right around the time that COVID first started.
Wow.
We thought that she had COVID, and then like she had 105 fever. It almost crippled her. Like she literally could not walk for almost 2 months, where I had to help her get wherever she was going. She'd get stuck places and would have to call me on the cell phone and be like, "Hey baby, I'm out in the garden. Can you come help me back to the house?" Like so this was whenever I was studying for promotion. I had to literally take care of her. I had to like take off of work and just take care of my wife while trying to study for promotion, because like I still wanted something more. I was tired of being told like I wasn't allowed to think. Like my brain is my greatest weapon, and I literally wasn't allowed to use it. And so I'm taking care of her, studying, and then I get promoted to driver. They send me to the farthest station out, and like it's out in Wellston, and I was like, I can't come back to work and drive out to Wellston. My wife is sick. Like I need to be in the city in case something happens. Like she hasn't even been taking care of anybody, and you want me to come back to 24-hour shifts where she's supposed to take care of everybody, and I can't be there if something goes wrong. Like not even be there, but be within 15, 30 minutes. It's a 45-minute drive. I was like, I can't do that. So I used every single bit of my sick time, every bit of like, you could ask for donated leave. I was able to get some donated leave. I used everything. And right before I ran out of time, an opening came up for public education, which I thought, I was like, the way that you kind of get brainwashed whenever you're running into fires for a living is that like that is the best job in the entire world. That like you have to believe that you were doing something amazing to do that. And I totally get that. But whenever this opportunity for public education came up, I was like, I can't do that. Like I'm a firefighter. I don't want to go into public education and stop running into fires. But otherwise I'm going to have to stay out here in the field, and things like getting sent to the farthest station are going to keep happening. Maybe this is a good fit. So I applied for that. And right before I literally used my last day of sick time of any kind, I had zero time. And I started the public education job that next shift.
Wow.
And so anyways, I did that for over 2 years and got promoted to major through that. I had a lot of, really great objective success, but I struggled to be part of the team. That same thing of not understanding my ADHD and understanding that ability to work as part of a team, and also that whole not wanting to be coached because I didn't want to be seen as less than. That like all those things intermingled with people who also were kind of had toxic masculinity, and the culture of the fire department is not very good for feelings and all that stuff. So it was just a really bad toxic mix that made it really hard for me to succeed inside the system. But like all of my outward facing tasks, I did fantastic on. Like, I managed a 501c3 in the event for that, and it was the most successful it had ever been for the 2 years I did it. And I did really good with that. But my boss told me about 6 months before I ended up leaving, like, something's up with you. And, I feel like you're not telling me something, and, you need to figure something out, or else, you're probably not going to be able to stay. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what's wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, all of the things I'm supposed to do, like, tick the boxes. I was able to do all those things, but there was this missing factor. And I don't know if me being more open with my ADHD would have made him understand that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never know. But like, I told him at that point, but I think the damage was already done. People in that job listen to the gossip and the rumors whenever they're given any, like not everybody listens to it all the time, but as soon as they're given any shred of truth to that. They're like, yep, it's just like they said. So I had been told a lot that I wasn't there for the right reasons. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm here to make money to support my family. And this one guy who was a really, really terrible relationship I had, his name was Biko, and he was really, really outspoken about the people he didn't like. And so he just talked trash about me all the time. And he's like, I just don't think you're here for the right reasons. You're doing this and that. And what I realize now is that he saw me trying to be something I wasn't, and thought I was just like being fake, and thought I was lying whenever. I was like, I just was trying to fit in. Yeah. I was just trying so hard to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. And he read that as, a negative. And is that his fault? I don't know. Is the way he handled it his fault? Absolutely. He was a monster. He made it a nightmare for me to come to work. Is it my fault that I wasn't honest with who I was? Yeah. But I also didn't realize that me trying to manage and just put on a brave face was being read that way. I had no idea.
No, I think that comes back to, some of the kind of the emotional intelligence piece that you talked about earlier, and being on your friend's podcast from a leadership perspective of being as a leader. I think one of the big characteristics is empathy, right? And being able to connect with the people that you lead, and not even lead, maybe he wasn't that, but even people that we work with, right? Of we don't know what people are bringing to work. We don't know what they're dealing with. We don't know what life stage unless we take time to get to know them, have that level of empathy to say, can I see you for this? And maybe there's things that we do a little bit differently, or I'm just empathetic to your situation. And so some of your behavior might be a little different. Like there's people who are grieving, who come to work and they're grieving, right? And that can affect work in ways that we interact with people. And so those are the things that, as you kind of hear that, I feel one, hopeful in the work that you're doing right now, because the people who are in positions of leadership that you get to speak to hopefully can be more authentic and empathetic in their positions, right?
Yeah. I talked about authentic leadership, like it's my specific platform for coaching leadership. It is so much more about leading with your heart than it is about like trying to force people to meet tasks, goals, whatever. It's like everybody is in a job or a position for a reason. There's got to be at least a base of amount of skill level that they bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And if you realize that, and you take the time to get to know them and find out what they enjoy and what they're good at, and you allow them to work on that, and you foster that growth, then they're going to want to perform for you. They're going to want to do things because you're letting them fulfill something that feels like at least part of their purpose.
Yeah.
And I absolutely was not getting that. I was, like I told you, it was like, stop talking so much. Mm-hmm. Like, stop asking questions. Like, just do what you're told. Like, that was never going to work for me. Now, if I could coach myself now, I would tell myself differently as to, like, it's not never going to work. You just have to understand that you can tell them who you are, and they don't have to accept all that. But if they would have known, like, hey, like, I'm ADHD, like, you're telling me things often, and like, I think that I'm doing them. I need you to be more clear about what I'm doing wrong when I'm not doing them. Yeah. Instead of, like, I would get feedback and then I would hide, and I'd pull farther and farther back. I would try to avoid them more and more because I was afraid of getting more and more negative feedback, because they didn't actually care about me trying to, like, feel better. They just wanted me to do the thing that they wanted, and they weren't communicating in a way that I could understand. And that's, I don't think that was ever going to be the long-term right place for me to be, but I could have gotten through it like a little more unscathed if I had known that you just gives people all the information up front. So then whenever they're not telling you things that are helping, you stop internalizing it so much. It's like, I've given you all the information that you need to communicate with me better. If you're not going to take it, then I realize that you don't actually care about me. So I'm going to stop taking those things that you're saying about me so personal. Yeah. Like, that's about you. Oh, I see it now. Like, you feel this way. That's what you feel. Yeah. It has nothing to do with who I am.
Well, and I kind of see the things that you're pulling from your different life experiences into the coaching that you're doing, into the podcast, all of those things that's part of your story that you've shared part of today, right? On the pod is these are some things that have impacted you in a way that you've been able to step back a little bit from and say, hey, what are the learnings that I can pull from this as I want to encourage and help other leaders who might be in similar situations?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's as you were kind of wrap back to the front of the podcast was what are you working on today? And it seems like getting a little bit of the backstory kind of gives us as listeners insights into kind of the coaching and area that you're really passionate about, because what I see also is that you want to unlock the potential.
Yeah.
And you want to help others do that. And I think you have felt it in some of your work environments where you're like, I have all this potential. Like I will be great in this role. Just my potential is not being unlocked because I'm not understood or people aren't taking the time to understand some of these strengths that I have.
Yeah.
And that's what I really see you doing in your coaching business, is to say, hey, here's how you as a leader can unlock the potential in the people that you lead.
Yeah, and it works from both sides. Is that, I really want to help people understand and embrace other people, but I also want to help people show up as themselves and let themselves be understood. It's impossible for somebody to understand a person who never shows up. Like, if you're constantly showing up as somebody else, then for one, you're belying who you really are, which is bad for your own interest long term. Like, you can't live to your potential if you're trying to be somebody you're not.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to allow people to voice themselves in a way that gives people the opportunity. Like, I don't think that the majority of people want to make other people feel bad. I think that, people can really put themselves first. They can, there's a lot of different things that are the priority in people's mind, but I don't think that their goal is to make other people feel bad. So I think that it's really important to be able to speak in a way that allows you to express who you are and give people the information so they're able to make decisions on how they want to communicate with you and what importance they want to put on making you feel seen. Like, I don't think that it's every person's responsibility to see you, but I think that given the opportunity, a lot of people will they'll take that in and will choose to exercise some of that information to improve their relationship as well.
I'd love to ask you kind of one last kind of deeper question, then maybe to kind of wrap up our time, a few kind of lighter hearted questions, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now in the season of life you're in, what ways do people describe you both incorrectly and correctly?
Yeah. So I'll start with incorrectly. Like, if you haven't actually taken the time to get to know me, people think that I'm mean because my face, I RBF, I unless I'm actively having conversation, I'm just focused all the time. Yeah. And it's not even that I look focused all the time. And some people think that looks angry, and I'm almost never angry. People think I'm serious, and that is the farthest from the truth. I am not a serious person. I really like to laugh and have fun.
Yeah.
And those are things that I've struggled with because you let people have these opinions about you and let those opinions weigh on your heart. And that's something I try not to do anymore. I'm not there. I don't want anybody to think that I think that I'm done. I'm far from it. I think that it is a continual process of, continuing to grow and be shaped by your experiences. And I think that people sometimes are projecting their own understanding onto other people. And that's something that I haven't really dealt with well in the past, but I'm learning to not put so much, pressure on it. The people who actually know me know that I'm very loving. I really care about my people. One of my friends told me whenever we were talking about us moving is that I'm the glue of our relationships. I'm the one who wants to I want to keep having people around. I want to have conversations with my people.
You initiate.
I initiate. I care about them. And so like, yeah, I'm a person who cares. I'm a person who is very motivated. Now, do people always understand what I'm working on? No. And that's okay. I like, as I was developing, what is my coaching business now, it went through several different iterations because it's both unfortunate and fortunate that I have attained a lot of skills and have a lot of talents. And I was trying to do all of those things at once because it's like, I really want to offer everything I have to the world to help other people be more seen. And that's not really a scalable business model. It's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
So, even as I'm coming into coaching, I was terrified to call it coaching. Like I didn't want to be seen as a life coach. Like I wanted to be in identity management, which I'm okay being a coach now. But initially I wanted to help you manage your identity because I didn't want people to think I was like selling like a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Like a lot of coaches are just like, they're out there just pushing some sort of philosophy that is surface level. And that's not what I'm doing. Like I really want to help to coach people because I think that I've been through it enough that I can help people understand how to be themselves and to see success in life. And that's the biggest thing that I want to impart to the world is that you can be yourself and still have like all kinds of success. You just have to you have to accept certain parameters of that. Like you have to be willing to make certain sacrifices for your goals. And that's really anything. But I think that I've seen it firsthand well enough. And I've done enough research and training. Like I'm a certified life coach and, I went back and got my degree and like I've learned so much through all the different experiences that I want to help people get to where I'm at and beyond much faster than I was able to. Like from the time that I started to look at how important it was to accept yourself to the time it actually took me to get there was a long time.
You're trying to shorten that path for
people. I just want to help pour everything I've learned into other people so they can start to love and embrace themselves and live in the path that is actually meant for them faster.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Very clear, evident in the work that you're doing, and even the way that I've heard how you're interacting and doing relationships with people in Oklahoma City. That's really awesome. I'd love to kind of leave any kind of last. We're kind of in that series. I'd love to kind of back out with 2 or 3 questions. But do you have any last kind of thoughts or anything about your business that you want to share?
This is the question that people always ask. That's something I always ask people that they're never prepared for.
Yeah,
and I feel equally as unprepared. But I'm going to push through, and I'm going to say something. I think that the most important thing to take away from learning about me is that I have been at the darkest space that a human can be. Like I've lived it. I'm not going to say that I'm beyond ever doubting myself or being depressed. Like I actually think that like I had a conversation on LinkedIn the other day about this, that doubt is important. I think that saying that like I've moved forward and I don't doubt myself anymore. That's not where I want to be. That might be right for you. It might be right for many other people, but for me, I want to continue doubting myself. I want to continue asking myself questions and having internal dialogue and say, is this right? Like doubt is a great tool for shaping yourself. If you let it just be that. Like, do I want to doubt myself to the point where I let my decisions become fear-based? I definitely don't want to do that. Like, and that's something that I've moved past, is making fear-based decisions. I want to use doubt as an analytical tool. Like, okay, if I'm doubting myself, maybe there's a perspective I'm not seeing. Let me step back and let me look at it from a different angle. And that's that self-awareness I talk about being so important. Is I think that doubt is a tool for sharpening your self-awareness and asking yourself questions. And like, I don't think you should ever stop doing that. I think it's important. So that's what I'll leave people in, is like, and if you are letting doubt become fear, that's where I would like to help.
Love it. All right. Let me think of 3 quick questions that we can end with. One would be, what is a hobby that you're spending time on right now? Do you have any hobbies?
Hobby? No,
I know you work a lot. I know you're grinding, and so
yeah, I am grinding, and like I really, so whenever I went back to school, I started taking drawing seriously.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it and like was really heavily into it. And as I started to build my podcast, my business up, I really made less time for it.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to make time for it again. And this thing called Inktober is coming up.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
And so I'm like, I told my daughter draws every single day. And I'm like, you want to do Inktober? She's like, yeah. You gonna have time? I'm like, I'm gonna make time. I'm gonna make sure like I want to get back into that. This is the second to last recording of a very, very busy period in which as we're moving, like I'm going to be not recording for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
Like, I've got lots of episodes, so I'll keep putting out content and like, I'll still be editing and stuff, but having this recording piece and writing for the episodes off my plate for a while, I'm going to dive back into the hobby of drawing. And I also I enjoy making music on my computer.
Okay.
Like I made my intro song. Like, that's something I enjoy doing. It doesn't come naturally though. So it's like something that takes a lot more like practice and YouTube videos and Skillshare and like trying to make sure I understand the basic fundamentals of the process. I enjoy that stuff. That's something I like nerding out about.
So are you going to post any of this Inktober, or will this be a private Inktober?
No, I'll post it in my personal account.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
like it's not something I'll put out there on my business account because it like, and I had because initially whenever I was finishing college, I thought I wanted to just do graphic design. Like I was like, that's what I want to do because I really enjoy graphic design.
Yeah.
But I like as I was trying to build out my business, like I tried to keep that as part of the business concept, but it didn't feel like it was niche enough. So it's something that I've still got in my back pocket. I do all my own graphic design for the podcast and business, but it's something that like down the road I might want to like offer back in. It's like authentic branding type stuff.
Yeah.
But I think right now it's kind of important to focus on the mentality of it. But in saying all that, I had an Instagram account for just posting that stuff. I think I'm going to get rid of it, but I will definitely be posting a lot of Inktober stuff.
So for the listeners, Inktober, there's a prompt per day in October that a group from around, it's international at this point, that people are kind of drawing the same things and posting them. There's a few different Inktober people who post prompts, but if you want to do that with Bruce and you want to do this, you can post, you can come along. I'm going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure Bruce might post his outline for what him and his daughter might be drawing. Or maybe, are you guys come up with your own prompts?
No.
Okay.
We just like the I think it's inktober.com is like the main one. So I would just download that. I'll post it I guess the day before last day of September.
Yep.
And anybody wants to hop on there, which this will come out after maybe at the end of October.
Okay.
So we're
late. So what I'll say is good luck to all those who did Inktober.
Yes.
Congratulations.
I'll make a post about it. Just to, seeing like we talked about it today. Anybody who wants to jump in and do October.
Cool. That'd be cool. Okay, last question. What is your most memorable meal that you've either made or like the setting, all of it? It's open. What is your most memorable meal?
Okay, so I can think of two different meals. Okay. One that I've made and one that I've eaten. Like I don't think that I've had a whole lot of super fancy experiences with people taking me to dinner and stuff like that. Like my wife's Aunt Kathy and Uncle Clint took us to what is it? Prime?
Yeah.
The one in Tulsa that's like right by PF Chang's.
Okay.
Took us there. That was a really good one. But the one that sticks out the most to me is when me and my brother and my dad were in the Tenerife Islands, or the Canary Islands on Tenerife. We went for pizza at I don't know why pizza was where we were going in Tenerife, but it was a really, really cool experience to be somewhere that was so far from America and Italy. It was neither. And we had this really, really good pizza. And we had it's one of the few conversations I remember having with my dad and brother where we didn't argue. There was there was no discomfort because my dad is trying to make somebody do something. which is like in like continual theme in conversations where me and my dad and my brother are there.
Yep.
Somebody is generally unhappy because we have not done what my dad wanted. But we were just there and we just had a good time and ate, and the meal was great. And they asked if, what kind of water we wanted. Like what kind of water? And then agua con gas or agua no con gas. And we're like, I said con gas. I was like, sure.
Yeah.
And it was my first time I ever drank sparkling water.
Yep.
And it like punched me in the mouth. I was like, oh, what is happening? What is wrong with this? And that's not something that I'd grown up with. Like I literally had never tried it before. And I thought it was disgusting. And it's so funny because now I love sparkling water.
Okay.
But that was just, I was expecting regular water.
Yeah.
And then after that, me and my brother, I left my dad at the resort that we were staying at, and we had like one of the most amazing nights I've ever had. Like I think I was maybe 15. Like once again, bad at time. My brother was, 3 years older than me, so he was 18. And we just went out to this club, and there was like not that many people there, but we always had such a good time together, just like dancing. And we met a couple of Irish guys who we hung out with, and like we just sat by this pool and talked for like 3 hours with these guys who were from Ireland, just about like what it's like where they're from. And they're like, so, you guys are from America, right? And it's like, yeah. You've heard of Ice Cube? It was like, yeah. It's like, man, we love him there. It was like, it was so weird because it was like, this was in one of the lulls of Ice Cube's career where it was like, yeah, Ice Cube, really, of all people? Like, he hasn't been, really popular like 10 years.
Yeah.
But, I remember that American culture, like, it spreads, and like, some places it takes a long time to catch up to where we are now. And it was just a really great, so it was like one of the best days I've ever had.
It's interesting how, I love eating with people. And so meals are near and dear. I do not cook. I do not grill. I do not smoke. I do not do any of that stuff like you do. So I'm envious of that.
Real quick, I forgot I was going to tell the other one is one of my friends who doesn't cook, but she liked to finance a meal. She would be like the financier, like we'd have like, I think the budget was like $300 because it was like me, my wife, another one of our good couple friends, and then her. Maybe there was one other adult there. Yeah, and then I think it was her husband at the time. And so it was the 6 of us, and then all of our kids, which was like another 14 people. So it was, and so for the kids, I made like fresh French bread pizzas from like nice Italian bread, and like everything else was like homemade, scratch. Like made the pizza sauce, everything. Because I never wanted to like look at kids like they can't enjoy a great meal. Like I made them like Caesar salads, like, I made the croutons, made everything for them. That was one part of the meal. That was just a kid's meal. For us, this was like the fanciest meal I've ever made for sure. And quite possibly the fanciest I've ever eaten.
Yeah.
So I made like seared scallops with I think it was a beurre blanc sauce, and then like dry aged ribeyes, and with like these creamy herb carrots I make. And there was one other part of it, but it was like everything was like the best I'd ever put out. It was like the steaks were cooked perfectly, the scallops were cooked perfectly, and everybody enjoyed it immensely. And we had a great conversation. That was one of those ones where I was so happy that everything came together at the right time. Because if you don't cook, let me tell you, it's difficult to get all of the things right at the right time and get it to everybody in the right time for it to stay right. So it was like getting everything done and served up and like on the plate, and then being able to sit down and enjoy it. It was quite the miracle. And it was so enjoyable to do, and then also to see other people enjoy. And I also didn't have to pay for it. And that was like, that's sometimes I find myself like, I love the experience of presenting food and like having people enjoy it. But then like, I like got this buyer's remorse where it's like, but I paid for it.
Yeah.
And that's like, so having somebody else like say, I would love to pay if you'll just cook it. It felt like that was one of those things where it's like, I felt seen. Mm-hmm. Like it didn't make me feel seen. Just the thank you and all that is like great, but it was like whenever you're also paying, it could feel like I was being taken advantage of because it was hard work.
Yeah,
it's like just not having to pay for it was enough, and I was like, yes.
So in the comments, leave your favorite meal. Also, maybe add the topic of discussion, because at these meals, there's amazing food and you can enjoy that, but also some of the memories of the conversations that come from those meals. So that would be a great conversation that we can have. So as closing, Bruce, I often say that when we are vulnerable about our stories, we create a more truthful narrative of how people become successful, how they get where they're at. And so thank you for being vulnerable today, sharing your story. Thank you for being authentic, as always. And thank you for inviting all of your podcast guests to step into that authenticity with you. You're making a huge impact, and I know this is just the beginning. Congrats on so many episodes. This is, like I said, I'll say it again, this is just the beginning for you, sir. So with that being said, I'm going to turn back the podcast over to the host, the one and only Bruce Alexander.
And Taylor, thank you so much. That was really great. I really enjoyed that. You asked great questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to giving my audience a better understanding of who I am and what I'm motivated by. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review. I really appreciate all the feedback. This last episode that I released, episode 10, I heard from more people than I'd ever heard from, saying like it was so good to get to know Peter.
Yeah.
It felt really good to me to know that people connected with him deeper by getting to hear his story. Like that's what I'm out here trying to do. Like I really love that experience, not just to pump my ego. Like I really do care to hear these reviews, because I'd like to hear what I'm not doing enough of, how I could improve, but I also want to know what I'm doing right. Like I do enjoy hearing that. Follow this podcast so you can get updates about new episodes and live streams. And if you are interested in bonus or behind the scenes content, go to the Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander Patreon page. Share this episode with someone you think might enjoy it right now. Check out earlier episodes to support the future creation of great content. And don't forget to like @Authentic Identity Management on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and LinkedIn. You can also head over to the Authentic Bruce YouTube channel for podcast video and impactful clips from my conversations with these great guests. Finally, if you are struggling to show up as yourself in your content, your work, your family, or your life, I would love to help you. Authentic Identity Management does authenticity and identity coaching to help you align your true self with the identity you share with the world.